Old School Lane Casual Chats is brought to you by Old School Lane, producing various content from blogs, videos, and podcasts discussing about movies, TV shows, video games, and everything else in between since 2011. You can check out the podcast on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Radio Public, Overcast, Breaker, Pocket Cast, and YouTube. We're associated with Channel Frederator, Manic Expression, The Comic Book Cast, and The Arun Mehta Show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Casual Chats. I am Patricia, and I am back with Paul Thomas, aka Gunther Fan 1992. So, welcome back, Paul.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be back.
So a few months ago, we discussed about the 2010 Cartoon Network animated series Adventure Time in honor of its anniversary. And we decided that we were going to go back to the topic because, as of the recording of this podcast, Adventure Time Distant Lands, the miniseries that premiered on HBO Max, has concluded. And they just announced that they're going to be doing another miniseries based off of the characters Fiona and Cake from that alternative universe based off of a fanfic that Ice King had written, or did he? I don't know, but anyway, so yeah, I'm genuinely excited about talking about this because we have 4 specials that we're going to be talking about, and each of them feature different characters and feature different scenarios and different tones, and I'm really excited about talking about this. So, a year after Adventure Time had aired its last episode, that was when the announcement that Adventure Time Distant Lands was going to be a thing. And Adam Muto mentioned that there were going to be like 4 separate stories featuring, the characters and having 4 different tales and expanding the land of Ood that we've never seen before. And so, yeah, we're going to be talking about them today. So, I want to preface this by saying major spoilers ahead. If you have not seen Adventure Time Distant Lands, then please, I implore you to go over to HBO Max or maybe wait until they air on Cartoon Network. I mean, I'm sure at this point in time they will, considering how popular Adventure Time still is. But if you do not want to know about what's going to happen in terms of the plot, go over to HBO Max and please check it out. All right, so let's talk about the first out of the 4 specials that came out, and that would be BMO, which premiered on June 25th of 2020. And the basic plot is this. In a distant part of the galaxy, BMO, a young scientist named Y5, and a protocol droid named Olive work together to save a dying space station. So, yeah, please, why don't you share your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so this was when they announced Distant Lands, I was excited, of course, because, more Adventure Time content. I'm always happy for that. But I was a little worried that, where are they going to take the show? Where are they going to take the characters? And when I saw BMO the first time in, what was it, like May? You said May of 2020. I was happy because it felt like, okay, this isn't like some radical departure. They're not completely changing the characters around. That said, I thought that the story was not bad by any means, but it felt like something that Adventure Time would have told. So it didn't blow me away at first, but I definitely like put fears to rest that it was going to be, like a jumping the shark situation. And of course, it's BMO.
Yes.
It's BMO. So I love BMO. So you can't get too mad about that, I guess.
Right. So yeah, I guess we can go over the plot. So it starts off with BMO in outer space, and he is traveling around, and he is with a companion named Olive, that it's basically a big green eye and has like a red little pupil. So I guess it makes a lot of sense for it to be an olive. So yeah, there's a meteor shower that destroys over his ship. He lands on a planet and he sees a space station known as the Drift. And so he is saved by a young rabbit girl named Y4, but she prefers to be called Y5. And she brings them over to the Drift, where they're being ruled by a person named Hugo, and the particular space station that they're living in is falling apart. There's a lot of problems that are happening constantly, and Y5 is trying to bring particular parts that can be able to save the drift so that it doesn't like completely crash. And so then we have Hugo's assistant known as Mr. M, who tells them, hey, if you go over to this part of the drift and if you grab this particular item, we can be able to save it. And then it just completely falls apart. And it turns out that that was the reason why things were falling apart in the first place, was because they were just grabbing like these particular parts, and the entire drift was like completely dying. The life has been dying, water starts leaking out, everything starts falling apart in terms of electricity. And so I mean, I think it's no surprise that we know who Mr. M is. I think that
Yeah.
that's no secret there for those who have been seeing the show. It's Martin. It's Martin, and this is like him in outer space, and he is, I mean, it's pretty obvious once you hear his voice. I mean, he is voiced by the same person. He's voiced by Stephen Root, so it is pretty predictable of who he is. And just like what Martin would do in a lot of the episodes of Adventure Time, he would help them out, and then the moment that they receive what he's looking for, then he just grabs it and then he just abandons them, and that's pretty much it. And so then when Hugo is revealed to be the kind of the one responsible for all of this, and so then BMO comes along and tries to help out, but then he falls apart, and then we have this moment where Y5 is trying to put him together, and we have a robot that kind of was like similar to him called Seago, and that actually brings up an interesting question. Go ahead, Paul.
Oh, I was just laughing at the fact that that scene always makes me smile with the Seago singing the theme from Frasier, right?
Yes,
to kind of complement
yes.
the show's fondness for old sitcom themes.
Yeah, that's a bit of a reoccurring thing. So we discussed about this in the last podcast of Adventure Time. So for those who don't know, if you have seen the Stakes miniseries, there's a callback to the Mr. Belvedere theme song. And if you have seen Simon and Marcy, there's a callback to the Cheers theme song. So once again, we have another theme song that's being sung, and it just so happens to be the Frasier theme song. I don't believe it was written by the same person. So no connections there. I'm still waiting. I was really disappointed there was no reference to Punky Brewster. So maybe Fiona and Cake will give us, maybe one day, maybe Fiona and Cake will give it to us. Anyway, so that scene was actually pretty sweet, and it just was kind of cool to see Seago helping BMO out when BMO completely like fell apart. And then we finally get to see that BMO suggests to everybody, well, they're completely panicking that the drift is about to fall apart, and they're about to be destroyed. It's like, hey, why don't we just work together to completely cut the power entirely, which sounds like it would be really, really risky, but it was able to help them out in the end. And then BMO finally goes back into outer space and lands on Earth. And then we find out it was a prequel this entire time, because we see a young Finn and Jake. So yeah, this was kind of a surprise. I mean, I have to admit that this probably is not one of my favorites out of the Distant Land specials. I would probably say it's probably my least favorite, but that's not to say that it was a bad one. I mean, I did enjoy the story. I did enjoy the setting, and I did enjoy some of the new characters that were brought in, and the fact that it got like pretty dark at points. But I think that you're right. I mean, the story wasn't bad, but you would expect to see this in an episode of Adventure Time. It doesn't like go above and beyond of what you would typically see. But I was genuinely surprised of how it turned out, and this would just be the beginning of what would be a stellar series that would just continue to get better and better.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the problems with BMO is not itself, because the quality is pretty good. It's the fact that, in my opinion, and we'll probably talk about this, of course, that
Sure.
Obsidian and Together Again, I think are some of the show's like best episodes.
Yes, I agree.
It's kind of hard to compare to that, but I did enjoy it, all things considered. I think it's probably my my third favorite of the four.
Okay.
So not the bottom or anything like that, but it was good. It was nice. When I saw it, like I said, I was like, oh, okay, so it's kind of like it's like a continuation of the show. I can handle that. I'm glad, there's room for expansion and sort of exploring these characters. I was really delighted and shocked to realize it was a prequel, because I thought going into it that it took place after the finale.
Yeah, same here. I thought that, after they were able to defeat Gulb and Finn and Jake went off into doing their separate things, and all the other characters were trying to live off their normal lives after that whole fiasco happened. I thought, okay, maybe BMO wanted to just go into space because reasons. But
Yeah.
no, I mean, you're right. It is a prequel. It takes place even before the events of the series, which was definitely a major surprise. And yeah, I mean, so I mean, I thought that going again, another reason why I thought it was a sequel is like, the last time that we saw Martin, he was floating into space, and I just thought, oh, maybe he just landed in this particular space station, but no, that didn't exactly happen.
I do like the idea though that he has a tendency to always get lost in space somehow and find his way back. He's gonna be okay, but it's I like that. I did love the reveal at the very end when we see that it's a prequel and there's little Finn and little Jake, and apparently the only thing that the reason that BMO and Finn and Jake got to know each other is literally because BMO was like, "Hey guys, what's up?"
Yeah.
And then they were like best friends forever. So I loved that little touch. There was no grand, huge backstory for how Finn and Jake found BMO. It was literally BMO just walked up to them.
Exactly. I have to say that Y5 was a great addition to the roster of Adventure Time characters. Now, I'm not sure whether her or another character we'll go into in just a moment is probably my favorite in terms of like the new characters that were brought in. But I did enjoy Y5. I enjoyed her resourcefulness. I really liked the relationship that her and BMO had. I thought it was definitely a nice little connection, especially since, out of all the characters that we knew, I mean, other than Martin, but beside the point, but there were like, I mean, BMO was like the only character that we already knew who it was. So everybody else was completely new. So this was, I mean, so we have a companionship with Y5 and BMO, and I thought that they were pretty good together.
Yeah, I agree. I liked it. At first, it's, a new character is always hard to introduce, but
oh, yes.
I like the energy that Wi-Fi brought to it. The voice acting was really stellar, and it definitely felt like sort of an analog to Finn and Jake without necessarily just being a Finn and Jake clone or a Finn and Jake like duplicate or something. There was a Wi-Fi brought like a new sort of spin on hero sidekick sort of things, and I enjoyed that. I also liked the whole sort of BMO as sheriff motif because
I really like that too. I thought that was really cool.
Stuff. Yeah,
the cowboy stuff, singing about potatoes. Yeah, that was really.
I gotta love it. Yeah, and the fact that he just sort of landed on the drift and was like, okay, well, I'm the sheriff now, and then everyone around him was like, okay. There was like, yeah, that's fine, that makes sense.
Yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, that was really cool.
And then the whole story of like, the Hugo kind of using the resources, I would have loved maybe a little more focus on that, because I thought that was some pretty good social commentary. I thought maybe a little on the nose at times, but I still like the idea that people who are in charge sometimes can like actually be the problem. Taking our resources and destroying the environment and stuff. So
sure, but sometimes I think that if done right, being on the nose is sometimes crucial for people to actually get the point.
That's true.
Because sometimes subtlety, like it can be so subtle that it'll fly over people's heads, and then they won't realize it until they actually watch it again and rewatch it again, and maybe like do analytical research on it, and maybe just contemplate on life and saying, oh, that's what it was about.
Oh, that's what that was about. Yeah, that's a good point. Because you don't want it to be too abstract to the point where no one is like, what the heck was that?
Yeah, it's definitely a fine line, but I think that they were able to play it off pretty well.
Yeah, I agree. I like I said, for the most part, I thought it was pretty good. It was a minor critique, if anything, and maybe I just wanted more of it rather than, or just like more exploration of that. But they did a really solid job, and I even liked how at the end Hugo, was this bad person, but there was even like he was stuck in stuck with Olive, and there was that potential that Hugo could redeem himself. Like it wasn't a complete he's completely unsavable. There was that nice sort of optimism that Adventure Time always has with even the villains.
Right, except for the Lich.
Yeah, exactly. That he doesn't.
But we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really did enjoy the special. I think the reason why it kind of lacks in terms of story was because this was the first time I believe that they did other than the last episode, that they did like a 45-minute long special where they were able to like tell a grander tale than what you would expect for Adventure Time to have, which was like 11 minutes long. It wasn't a mini series just like what you would see in Stakes or Islands or any of the sort, and it wasn't like the last episode where they knew that they had to complete it because that was the last chance. But yeah, I think that they were just trying to get their footing in terms of like how much they can tell, what characters need to be focused on, what's going to be the scenario. So I think that once we get over to the other specials, I feel that this is where they understood, okay, now we know what we can be able to do next time.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I've always been a little lenient with Adventure Time in terms of like if I think they made a artistic misstep, because usually when they've done it, it was the first time they've attempted that specific thing.
Sure.
So like season 6, for instance, got a lot of flack from some people in the fandom for its story, like the season-long story. But I was willing to be like, well, this is literally the first time the show has tried this. So it's, it's probably not going to be like 100% perfect. And that's how I feel about BMO. Like it wasn't 100% perfect, but like this was the first instance of them trying this new thing. So, there's going to be some little bumps here and there, but I liked it. I thought it was really good overall and made me excited for the rest.
Yeah, and I think that it also depends on how much you like BMO as a character. If you're not a BMO fan, maybe you won't get into it. But if you're like a genuine BMO fan, and if BMO is one of your favorite characters, then I think you'll really enjoy it.
Yeah, that's a great point too. I guess I didn't think of that because who doesn't like BMO? But you're right.
Yeah. But still, I think that the fact that we have stories that focus on specific characters, and I remember that during the time of Distant Lands, they were like saying, oh, I want to see the focus on these characters next. And I'm sure that we'll get to that toward the end. But yeah, I think that not knowing on who was going to be the focus of, because we were given information about this little bit at a time. So we knew about BMO first. And then people were saying, okay, what's going to be the next one? And people were like debating and saying like, oh, I think it's going to be these characters who are going to be next. And then finally we did get the reveal on the next characters when we saw it on the trailer just a few months later, and it was going to be Obsidian, and this one was going to be about Marceline and Princess Bubblegum, and it premiered a few months later on November 19th. So here is the simple plot synopsis. Marceline with Princess Bubblegum travel to the Glass Kingdom, where is under the threat of the dragon Moto Larva, trapped inside a furnace of the kingdom. While currently in a romantic relationship, Marceline has to deal with her past conflicts.
Obsidian, hands down, I think is my favorite episode of the series.
Yeah, so I guess we can get started. So
oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. No.
Oh, no, go ahead. I don't mind.
No, I like to wax poetic about this.
It's okay. Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Yeah, no, I loved this episode. I'm a huge Marceline fan. I'm a huge Bubbling fan. And when they announced that they were going to be doing some episodes, and like you said, BMO was one of the characters that was picked or going to be featured, I was like, okay, well, I need to know more about Bubblegum and Marceline. And I was so happy that they decided to do it. And I'm happy that it was a pretty intense episode in places. Emotionally, it had some extremely, I don't want to say mature content. That's not what I mean, but like it was scary at times. Like when Marceline's mom coughs up blood. Yeah, that's something we hadn't seen on Adventure Time before. I know that during the production of the season 5 episode, Simon and Marcy, originally in the storyboard, Simon was trying to find medicine for Marceline rather than chicken soup. And Cartoon Network was like, oh no, that's too dark. And so from that, we go from there to this, where Marceline's mom has some sort of, I don't know, radiation poisoning or something.
Yeah, it looks like radiation poisoning, considering that it takes place shortly after the events of the Mushroom War.
Yeah, and that's just like really, really intense. And then you're dealing with that alongside Marceline and Bubblegum's developing relation, or not developing relationship, like the past of their relationship as well as the sort of present and future of it.
Yeah.
And it deals with some fairly heavy topics for relationships, like honesty and expressing what you feel and truthfulness and all that good stuff. And I thought it was really, really touching, and I loved it.
Yeah. Out of the four specials, this one has the most music, which it makes a lot of sense because it is Marceline after all.
Yeah,
But the music here is some of the best that Adventure Time has ever featured.
I completely agree. Yeah, it's awesome. I know that the it was the musicians who helped write some of the music for the episode were Half Shy and Zuzu, who are artists that were previously not affiliated with the show, but who Adam Muda liked and just reached out to him and said, "Hey, do you want to write some songs for us?"
Mm-hmm.
And both of them were big Adventure Time fans, and both of them were really, really excited to do it. And you can tell because the quality of the music is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Zuzu is a British singer from Liverpool, and Half Shy is a indie musician from like the West Coast, I believe is Seattle.
Yeah, I think she's Seattle.
Yeah. So I actually did a video discussing about the 4 ways that fans will be able to become so integral to their favorite shows that they eventually became a part of their favorite shows. And I did a whole discussion about Obsidian. In fact, Obsidian was the reason why I did that video in the first place, was because I learned about what Half Shy did, where she was a huge Adventure Time fan to the point in which she actually wrote Adventure Time fan songs. And Adam Muto listened to some of her songs and even bought her album and was like, "Hey, would you like to write some songs for Distant Lands?" And she was saying yes, she would love to. And she wrote Monster. And I even said when I did that video that Monster at the time that I did that video was in like the top 5 songs according to Spotify.
Oh,
right
wow,
up there. Really? Yeah, it was like right up there with I Remember You and various other songs as as one of the best songs that was featured. And it got unanimous praise from a lot of people. And it was, and you can definitely tell that Half Shy really knew about the characters and about Marceline's feelings, and knowing about the context of how Marceline was feeling as a vampire, because we saw this already in previous episodes, and how much that bubblegum had meant to her in terms of changing her for the better, where she was able to become a lot less angry and a lot less angsty, and finally being able to confront her past that she's been trying to hide away from it for hundreds of years. And this is the first time that we actually do get to see more flashbacks of her mom. I mean, we got a bit of it in the Stakes miniseries, but not that much. But finally we got to see the whole thing, and wow, does it leave you so sad. It's a major heartbreaking moment.
Yeah, it really shows that. I mean, Marceline's a character that I feel like has sort of a puppy that's been kicked around a lot. Every parental figure that she's had has either abandoned her, died, or gone crazy.
Yeah, by the way, are you familiar with the Marcy and Simon comic series, right?
Yeah, I am. I haven't actually read them, but I do have. I have the collected collection. I just haven't gotten around to reading it.
Okay, so Olivia Olson, the voice of Marceline, actually took the lyrics from a song that she sang in the Marcy and Simon comic book series, and it's called "Take Care, Caretaker." And if you read the lyrics, it's actually pretty heartbreaking. But when you listen to Olivia singing it, wow, is it amazing, because you have her singing about both Hunson Abadir and Simon, about how, she had to, be cared for as a child. And then eventually, for some reason or another, they left her. And so then she concludes the song saying, "Well, I'm going to take care of myself now."
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, it's on Olivia Olson's YouTube channel. I highly recommend that you check it out.
Yeah, I'll definitely need to do that. I need to read the comics too, because all things Adventure Time are good things Adventure Time.
Right.
Yeah, I actually, if you and the viewers are interested, I know a little fun tidbit about the song "Wake Up."
Oh yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so I worked on that book about the production history of Adventure Time, and I'm working on a kind of a updated version with a bunch of other new fun stuff in it. And while working on that, I reached out to Zuzu and
Oh,
asked if
nice.
I
You
could.
did.
Yeah,
You finally reached out to Zuzu. I knew
I
you would.
finally got in contact with her. And I asked if she'd be willing to answer some questions, and she was like, "Yeah, that's no problem." And she told me that when Adam reached out to her and said, "Hey, would you be interested in writing the song for basically what became Woke Up?" There was some sort of miscommunication, and she thought that she was going to write all of the music for the special. So she
Oh,
wrote "Woke Up" to be the breakup song, and then she wrote "Eternity with You" to be kind of like what Monster would have been. And then
gotcha.
gave him, sent him over, and Adam was like, "Oh, oops, I didn't mean that, but this song slaps, so we're going to use it at the end." So they kind of rewrote the lyrics a little bit, but they managed to use both of them, which I thought was kind of funny. So Zuzu got 2 songs out of it accidentally, and both of them are good. So I'm
Yeah.
happy.
I do agree. Yes.
Um,
But I thought that that was interesting because, um, it's definitely like the complete opposite if you listen to both of them. So "Woke Up" is the breakup song that Marceline sings to Bubblegum and trying to confront Moto Larva, who is attacking the Glass Kingdom. And then we have "Eternity with You," which is the last song, and Glass Boy sings it with him playing on Marceline's toy cardboard ukulele, and we have Marceline and Bubblegum dancing together, and it definitely is like a great song to kind of close things off because it just shows that I cannot do anything without you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. And then we even have that nice little number, that little flashback moment in which we finally get to see how
yeah,
Bubblegum got the shirt.
that was the moment I feel like the the fandom had everyone in the fandom had wanted to see, well, maybe not everyone, but a good part of the fandom had wanted to see, how did Princess Bubblegum get that shirt? What is the story behind the shirt? And they never told us. They never told us. And then in the very, very last scene of the very, very last Marceline and Bubblegum episode, we get to see how the shirt story. And it was very emotionally touching and sweet. And it was nice to have that episode end. Obviously, ended on a happy note. It's
Mm-hmm.
Adventure Time, it usually does, but end in kind of like a definitively happy way.
Yeah, it did actually, because I even said in my video, if this was the last time we were going to see Marceline and Bubblegum, I would be 100%
Mm-hmm.
satisfied. And I was, because we finally get to learn about what happened with Marceline and her mom during the events of the Mushroom War. We finally get to see them together. We finally get to have that closure where we get to see them together and finally make up. And we get to finally see where Bubblegum got the shirt. And we even get to see what happened with Finn. So,
Yeah,
yeah, that was actually a bit of a surprise where we got to see an adult Finn, because we saw Simon in the beginning of the special and he looked pretty much the same. So we thought, okay, this take place shortly after the events of
yeah.
the war. But no, it takes place like decades later.
Yeah, that definitely caught me off guard when I first saw it. And it was one of those moments where it wasn't like Finn was older, he wasn't a kid anymore. No little white hat. And you'd think it would be sad, but it was kind of like a triumphant, like, oh, okay, well, he's still out there, even though he's not a kid anymore, a little boy running around saving the world, he's still a full-grown man running around saving the world with
Yeah.
Bronwyn and maybe Simon. I don't know what Simon's doing now, but
Yeah. I guess maybe we'll get it in Fiona and Cake,
yeah,
because we saw Simon in the promotional art. So maybe he'll have a part in this. I don't know. But yeah, I think that it's really cool and it kind of like a full circle moment where we got to see Finn and Bronwyn together, because Finn and Jake were always like really close friends and they were practically brothers. And so we have Finn basically taking over and teaching Bronwyn the rope. So it's like, yeah, that's actually pretty sweet that he's able to teach Jake's granddaughter the ropes.
yeah, absolutely. I liked that, and of course, it brings up the question of what happened to Jake, which I feel like we both know and don't know at the same time.
Yeah,
Like he
yeah.
obviously died, but there's a
Obviously.
huge, mysterious like question mark there. Um,
Yeah.
and I know the fandom was sort of in denial when that happened because they're like, no, 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 he's not dead. He's not dead. It's fine. It's fine. It's like, no.
Right.
If that
But
had been the end, like if that had been the last time we saw Finn and Jake ever, that would have been terrible.
oh yeah, I
Just a
agree,
giant,
because it's like it would have been like a huge question mark, and it would
yeah.
like a bunch of theories would have been flying around. It's like, wait a minute, what happened to Jake? Is he dead? Did he just go away? What happened? You
Yeah,
know?
so I'm glad we got that answered in the next episode. But at the time, it was still like, oh wow, time is moving on for these characters, and I guess that's okay. That's how the world works. But,
Yeah. Now, my issues with this special, and I even said this on our original podcast on Adventure Time, the Glass Kingdom characters, I did
Oh, yeah.
not like them.
No, I didn't either. Glass Boy was annoying.
Yeah, and no disrespect to Michaela Deed. She
Oh
did
no,
a
absolutely not.
no, she did a phenomenal job, and she's doing great now. I mean, I saw her in the Owl House as V, and she's also doing the Ghost of Molly McGee as Daryl, the younger brother of Molly. So yeah, she's doing still phenomenal work, but man, did I just not care about Glass Boy or any of the other characters. I mean, that one moment where you have Marceline just feeling so sad when she listened to the voice message of her mom saying that she was going to be okay in the shelter, and that, she knows that she is a good girl because she has a good heart. And you feel that emotional moment where she's crying and she realizes that her mom didn't abandon her. The reason why that she told her to go to the shelter was because she loved her and she didn't want her to see her die. And then the moment that we see the shadow, it's like, wait a minute, is that Princess Bubblegum coming back to confront Marceline and say, I'm sorry? Nope, it's Glass Boy is saying, hey, it's me. And I'm like, oh, damn it.
Yeah, and he said it in the most obnoxious way too. I mean, again, it was purposefully obnoxious.
I know it was purposefully, but that moment was dead to me.
I think one reason, I know I on Instagram, I was following, I follow Hannah Kay, and I asked her, who one of the storyboard artists, and I asked her, was Glass Boy inspired by the Marceline fans? And she was like, oh, definitely. So maybe that's the reason I don't like him, because he reminds me too much of me, because that's exactly the beginning part when he goes to her house and like sees her for the first time, and she's sort of there's like presented as like almost a god to him.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
oh, Saint Marceline, we need your assistance.
That's exactly how I would be. I would be like, oh my gosh, Marceline's so cool. So maybe that's why I find Glass Boy to be a little obnoxious. I get it. It's too close.
I get it. I completely get it.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I do wonder why they. I mean, I guess maybe the Glass Kingdom was just kind of a new place, but I don't know. It was just whatever. It felt kind of like,
was kind of whatever. Again, it just felt like what you would see in Adventure Time, at least with the Drift. It was definitely a bit of a different change of pace because it was, well, in space. And
yeah, definitely.
But the Glass Kingdom, again, not really that much. I mean, I did like the design of it. I thought it was really cool, and I like the colors of it, but it wasn't like, wow, this is completely different and so unique and fresh. But I mean, it was just okay, and I actually really did like the touch that it was like in a desert, and you have, and when that if you combine sand with extreme heat, you make glass. And I thought that was really clever.
Yeah, absolutely. And I it was pretty too, like artistically it looked really great.
It was absolutely.
Yeah, I also love I don't know who the actress was, so I'm blanking, but the person who voiced See-Through Princess.
Oh yeah. I don't know who that is.
I believe she's Australian.
Possibly.
She had a nice accent, and I liked how she said Marceline.
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 Yes.
Good Saint Marceline. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, it was wasn't like didn't take away from it terribly, but it wasn't my favorite part.
Sure. I mean, everything else was great, though. I really like that opening. The one thing that I thought was really, really clever was the Glass Kingdom was singing Marceline's song completely wrong. And you would think, like, hundreds upon hundreds of years later, they, the words would be changed, rearranged, and the lyrics would be completely off than what it was before. And the melody would kind of still keep to it, but be changed over time. I thought that opening bit where Glass Boy is like walking in the desert and we get to see Marceline and Bubblegum just living off their domestic lives together. I thought that was like really, really clever. I really did like that part. And I mean, I also did enjoy with like at first that Bubblegum and Marceline didn't want to go back into the Glass Kingdom, and we didn't know why at the time. We just thought, okay, well, maybe their adventure time is over.
Yeah.
Cover there.
Hey.
Anyway, so maybe maybe they just want to just settle down and just be a couple and not have to worry about saving the world. But no, there's actually much more of a deeper connection than that. And they thought, they even suggested, hey, there are plenty of other heroes out there, suggesting Finn. And then we even have like bits of moments where we actually do get to see like the flashbacks from Marceline. It's like, oh yeah, this is from the Stakes miniseries, and this is from that episode, and this is from this episode. And it was able to like culminate together. And I also really enjoyed seeing Bubblegum and Marceline. They are getting along, but at first you have them kind of like fighting towards each other, because when Marceline tried to play Woke Up Again and then it didn't work, and then Bubblegum decided that she was going to be the one to do a plan B behind Marceline's back, and then they just kind of like fight it off, saying like, no, I can't do it. And then she realizes that she doesn't have that much angst anymore, because, well, I mean, she's been with Bubblegum and she was able to become a lot softer and became a lot more trustful for a lot of people.
I did like that bit when she's can't think of like an angsty song.
Yeah, I was like talking about like a hairbrush or something.
Yeah, using a hairbrush, and then I can't remember the exact line, but she's like, "Oh no, it has my like happiness drained all of my artistic ability."
Yeah,
and
yeah.
No, the answer was no, because just different types of emotions she's feeling now. But yeah, it was good. I loved Obsidian. I thought it was, like I said, I think is my favorite of the.
It's my second favorite, to be sure, because other than the Glass Kingdom and Glass Boys stuff, like I didn't care. But other than that, everything else was just phenomenal. The music was phenomenal. The characters that we got to see coming back, they're able to expand their storylines, which makes a whole lot of sense. They were able to reveal some moments that we wanted to know about for a long time, like Marceline's backstory and the relationship with Marceline and Bubblegum. We got that answered, and it was able to end it on such a wonderful note. I think that out of the endings in terms of tone, it's my favorite, because it's definitive, it's happy, and you feel like completely satisfied. It is complete.
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, if this was the last Marceline and Bubblegum episode, and this is hard for me to say, but I do agree. If this was the last one, I would be okay with that. It's a good ending.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, so let's go over to the third one. Now, here's the thing that I'm sure a lot of people already know. Now, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, there were a lot of delays in terms of what would be the third special, Wizard City. But because that Together Again was almost complete, they decided to switch positions, and this time around we had what was originally supposed to be the last episode of Distant Lands become the third to last episode of Distant Lands, and it shows, by the way. So I'm actually curious, do you want to actually talk about Together Again, or should we go over to Wizard City, which was originally supposed to be the third special?
Oh, that's a good idea. I actually think that's a good idea. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about Wizard City, because even though that I believe that Hannah Kay or somebody stated, okay, we have BMO, Obsidian, and Together Again as like the main course, and Wizard City is like the peppermint after dinner mint or something like that, which, okay, I can completely understand if you want to say it from that perspective, but if you were to watch both of them back to back, you kind of had a feeling on what was really the last episode of Distant Lands. So let's go over to Wizard City. So Peppermint Butler starts off as an inexperienced student at Wizard School to attempt to relearn magic. When events on the school campus lead to suspicion of Pep due to his past, the question remains whether he can master the magic soon enough to show that he is innocent. So for those who are really confused as to why is Peppermint Butler a child, you clearly didn't see the last episodes of the series where he fell into the dum-dum juice and he reverted back to a child. And so we do get to see that portion of the story where we were like, okay, what happened to Peppermint Butler? Because we did see it Together Again, which again, I think that that's like the furthest part of the series, even more so than Obsidian, that, he turns back to normal. But in this part, we have the young Peppermint Butler, and he goes over to Wizard City so that he can be able to go over to the wizard school and he can be able to relearn his magic again. And yeah, so Wizard City, this one definitely feels like something that you would see in Adventure Time. You have the city that's filled with magic, and everybody has their own unique ways of doing it. And you have the school, which definitely kind of reminds me of Hogwarts, with like, oh, you're
Hmm.
going to be sorted into this school because of the amount of magic that you know. And then we have a new character, Kadabra, who is the niece of Abracadaniel. And then we have this mysterious thing that's going on involving with like students disappearing. And then there's like this, huge mystery that's being unfolded. And a lot of people are saying like, okay, what's going on? And then people are saying, okay, well, maybe Peppermint Butler was the one who did it because, he was the master of dark magic and he was forever banned in Wizard City. And so then, Peppermint Butler then Pep had to lie, saying, "Oh no, no, no! I'm his nephew, and I'm nowhere anywhere near my uncle Peppermint Butler." So, yeah, basically, it's kind of like if you took like a mystery series mixed with monsters and magic and going to school, and you have Wizard City.
Yeah, a nice, healthy. Someone described it, I think, as like mixing Harry Potter and Summer Camp Island together,
Oh,
which
interesting.
I can definitely see that. Yeah, I'll be upfront here. This was probably my least favorite of the four, and
Okay, I can
for
see that.
reasons I can talk about here in a second because I don't want to rush through anything. But I did. I want to say start off on a positive here. Abracadabra, I think is her name, or just Kadabra.
Yeah, it's just Kadabra.
Fantastic character.
Yes, I love her. Her and Y5 are tied as to like my new favorite characters that were featured in these specials.
Yeah, it was very. I this doesn't happen a lot. I feel like with media, but I feel like I kind of just wanted her to be the star because she
Oh,
was so
sure.
charming, just so sweet, and whenever you introduce a new character, it can always be really really tricky to get it right and to make it feel like something other than just sort of you've forced in a new character there. But I definitely felt that way with her. I was like, oh, she feels like a character that has been here for the show the entire time.
Yeah,
uh
and also not to mention that she did have kind of a connection with Abracadaniel
yeah,
because they were family, but she is her own character, completely separated from Abracadaniel, which could have been so much easy if they would have played in that direction.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they could have just been like, oh, this is her entire personality is
Basically,
Abracadaniel.
Abracadaniel.
Yeah,
Yes.
and they didn't. They gave her a complete new sort of direction. I mean that you can still tell like she still feels kind of like somebody that Abracadaniel would be related to, but she's different in her own way, and I love that. I hope that if we do get more of Wizard City or some sort of Wizard City adjacent material, that we get more of her.
Yeah. And I also really like the fact that out of all the magic that she's really, really interested in learning, she's learning about like parlor tricks
Yeah,
that you would see in like your typical birthday party or bar mitzvah or magic show, which I thought that that was actually really cute. That she's more interested in that as opposed to like real magic, as you would say, like with spells and with
hmm,
potions and concoctions and summonings. It's like, no, I want to learn about card tricks and making things disappear.
it's been a second since I've seen it, but she was pretty good at like actual magic, wasn't she?
Yeah, she
Like she
was,
just
but
didn't like it.
yeah, she just didn't like it. She didn't really
Hmm.
care for it. She just wanted to learn parlor tricks.
Yeah, I love Adventure Time's willingness to take like sort of take the obvious answer and then sort of toss it out. So like Marceline is a demon vampire, but she's also this like lovesick hero, and you have Kadebra who's like really good at magic, but she doesn't want to do that. She wants to do the parlor tricks because that's the neat stuff. I
Yeah,
like that.
and
It's
then you have Princess Bubblegum, who's like really pretty and sweet, but she's kind of like a scientist who's also a very controlling dictator.
exactly. So it continues that trend of sort of having an obvious answer that is not taken,
Right.
and I like that. Yeah, and
Yeah. So yeah, I think that a thing that I was genuinely surprised at was there was a side of mystery to it that involved with like, people disappearing and also somebody dies who just so
Yeah,
happens to be a child. And I'm like, oh my God, they went
absolutely.
there.
That's what shocked me so much, and that's one thing I didn't particularly love about it was that, and not to say that Adventure Time has always had like its death and violence and stuff, but this one felt like strangely, like not even really mean spirited, just unnecessarily dark at times.
Oh,
Like
sure.
there
Yeah.
was a lot of death,
Yeah.
which
A lot
surprised
of,
me.
and that was surprising to say the least. Like I just thought, oh, maybe he was like captured and maybe put in a jail and forced magic or being controlled or something, but no, he's dead.
He died.
He
And
died.
I think he exploded too. Well, we didn't see that, but
Well,
I
I
think
mean, no,
that's
we
what
didn't
they.
see that. We just see his skeleton on a throne.
Yeah, and that the ending when Peppermint Butler is filled with the spirit of Kokentepe, I think his name
Yeah,
was,
Kokentepe.
and then he just murders all of the wizards.
Why? Yeah, like wow, like
Yeah, I was
that was
not.
surprising. Like, I mean, we find out that the professors at this wizard school was the one who did it. Oh, shock, shock, surprise,
Yeah,
surprise. But then when Peppermint Butler is taken over by Kokentepe, it's like, yeah, you guys are gonna die too. And then we have finally Peppermint Butler is able to be controlled with his dark self thanks to Kadabra. And finally we have him ripping out his essence of the actual Peppermint Butler who has been telling him this
oh
entire
yeah,
time, which I don't know. I mean, that doesn't really make a lot of sense considering that he kind of comes back in together again. I don't know where that goes in. Maybe he comes back. Maybe he actually grows up to be the person he didn't want to be, which actually would be really interesting, but I don't know. They don't exactly
yeah.
answer that question.
I know that I had to do a lot of digging because I was confused as to what that sort. I liked the idea of like being haunted by yourself, like the
I actually
ghost of
did like that
yourself.
too. It
But
kind of, it's, yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I didn't understand the timeline very well.
Yeah, I didn't understand the timeline either because clearly Together Again was like the furthest from the timeline compared to the other four specials. And we see that because, well, Peppermint Butler is a child in this one and not an adult as we saw in Together Again. So, yeah, that doesn't exactly make a lot of sense in terms of the plot. But I think that what kind of elevates it just a tad bit for me was actually I did actually like the surroundings of Wizard City. I actually
Mhm.
like that there was a bit of a mystery to it that kind of like made you feel suspenseful and they were able to get down the story. I think that thanks to Obsidian and Together Again, they actually did know how far they can take the story, which is why
Mhm.
I think that it was like the third best. But and in terms of like how I felt, I just felt cold when watching
Yeah.
it. It's like, wow, they were able to kill Spader, and Kokentepe was able to kill off the professors, and we have Choose Goose who gets taken over by Kokentepe. What?
Yeah, it was a lot. And it was one of those things that when it happened, I was like, okay, well, I mean, this is Adventure Time. I can buy some of the stuff and it wasn't bad. Like I didn't hate it or anything like that, but it just felt very different, strange.
Yeah, it
And
was different. And you know what? I will give them credit that it was able to take it in a place that was not what you would expect in Adventure Time,
that's
but
true.
I still don't know how to feel about it.
Yeah. I think it's one of those that as time goes on, I'll probably come to enjoy it like the others.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't know. The school parts though, like you said, sort of exploring the Wizard City like school stuff. I liked that. I thought that
Yeah.
was really fun,
Yeah,
enjoyable.
I
So
really did enjoy the dynamics of Peppermint Butler and Kadabra together.
mhm, I did as
and
well.
and I also enjoyed the music. Half Shy was able to come back again and do the music for this special, which I'm glad that she was able to get another chance, considering that Zuzu got two songs in Obsidian, and Half Shy only got one. But no, they were able to balance it out by having Half Shy do the music for Wizard City, which I thought was really nice.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't know about that until I think it aired, and they
Yeah, because they
maybe
didn't.
Adam
Yeah,
mentioned.
they credit her with her real name and not just Half Shy.
Yeah, and that's cool. I always love it when folks that worked on the show come back.
Especially if
Because
they were people who didn't originally work on the show to begin with.
yeah,
And even more so, a person who was simply a fan of the show that was able to do such a good job that they decided to bring them back again.
yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I told Hasha when I talked to her that I was very jealous of her experience in a good way, of course. You know, like
Sure,
as a
sure.
fan, getting to write for your favorite show, that's like literally the dream of every fan out there. So that's
Well,
really
hey, I
cool
mean,
that
maybe you'll
they
get your chance. I mean, Fiona and Cake is going to be coming out.
maybe, you never know.
That's true.
um,
I mean, I
but
know that they
yeah,
said that it was going to be like a mini series, and I know they're doing production, but who knows? Maybe they're working on something else that we don't know about.
that's true, and very well could be because they're pretty secretive, you know, and
Yeah,
you never know what's going
they
on behind the
always
scenes.
like to do something, and then before you know it, it's like, hey, we're having this coming out. It's like, wait, what? Exactly.
Yep. Yeah, I don't
All
think any of
right.
us were
So
expecting.
yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of Wizard City. So yeah, let's finally go. What was originally supposed to be the last episode of the special, but as we mentioned earlier, due to the fact that there was a lot of delays due to COVID, that it couldn't come out in time. So Together Again. So here's the plot synopsis. By the way, major spoilers, by the way, because okay, you know what, I'm not going to read the plot synopsis because they give it away. So let me just start off with the beginning of the plot. So it starts off with Finn and Jake going on their adventure, grabbing like the 50 flavors of ice cream, and so they go over and they save what was it, like Lumpy Space Princess and Turtle Princess from the Ice King from boiling ice, which that makes sense. And so it does definitely play off like what you would see in an early episode of Adventure Time, which I thought was like really, really clever and had a lot of great callbacks. And, you know, and it also had like a lot of Easter eggs if you're able to pay attention. And then we see Jake saying, oh, I have to go. You know, this is where I belong, when the you know, when he starts like melting away and then he lands into the grave stone, and then he goes over to the hole, and then finally the ice cream, you know, goes down there too, and then you know, Finn is trying to rescue him, and then, you know, it turns out that it was like some sort of like memory sucking monster, and we see an old Finn, you know, kicking it out and saying, oh, well, it was just a perfect illusion, thinking that I was back in the old days. And that was actually quite a surprise. I did not expect that to happen.
I was curious how they were gonna kind of wrap up Finn and Jake's, because they advertise this as like, you know, Finn and Jake reunite and go on their biggest adventure yet. And I was like, you know, I feel like they've said that for everything. So how are they gonna do this? And within the first however many minutes, it's like, oh, they're dead.
Yeah, like that was a surprise. I thought that this was going to be the special where Jake died.
Yeah, I did too.
I thought that this was going to be okay. We saw in Obsidian that Finn had the tattoo, that most likely Jake is dead. And I thought that this was going to be their final adventure, that, you know, at some point Jake was going to die and Finn was going to, you know, be sad. And then he was going to be his own adventurer. And then he was going to take Bronwyn under his wing and they were going to go on to their own adventures. But no, it took me into a direction I never thought that was going to happen. They are dead.
Yeah. And yeah, and it wasn't even, and it didn't end with the whole like, oh, well, well, I guess it kind of did. They got a chance at life again, but in a different way. It wasn't like they were returned, you know, back to the same. It was, they died. Like that was the end of Finn and Jake, but not the end of Finn and Jake, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, and I know that somebody out there had their minds implode for the confusion.
Yeah, exactly. I know there are people that I've talked to who are like, I didn't like it because like it was Finn and Jake's story didn't have an end. It was too cyclical. And I'm like, isn't that the point of the show? I feel like that's the point the show often made, is that like,
yeah, I mean, it's in the theme song, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
The fun will never end.
But in terms of like having an episode dedicated to, you know, your main characters dying, it was surprisingly fun and happy and lighthearted for what it was, you know? And I really enjoyed it. Personally, I think Obsidian's my favorite, but I kind of try, and the critic in me will say that I think Together Again was probably the best. Like,
I agree. This is my favorite one. It was so incredible. It had the whole package. Mm-hmm. It had our favorite characters reuniting together. It had, I really did enjoy seeing the land of the dead.
Mhm.
And it was, and just, seeing like the different sections was like really, really cool. And reuniting with other characters that we haven't seen in so long, like Shoko and Joshua, Margaret,
Yeah,
Jermaine, and
and tree trunks.
yeah, Tree Trunks, her last performance right before she passed away. Oh
And it was a
man.
good, strangely, I feel like it was tasteful, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
uh
yeah, it was. It
I
was.
I know that back in the day, when Adventure Time was in its fifth or sixth season or whatever, when Jesse Moynihan was still on the show, um, the fans would, and he would like pop into forums and stuff and talk to us sometimes.
Okay.
There was one forum that we went to that was called Landezvous, and he would every once in a while jump in, and he mentioned how he always wanted to get like basically how death in Adventure Time works, because there's both like
I know what you're referring
reincarnation.
to. Is this the one
Yeah.
where like, there was a hole in the land and like an earth, and then Jake died and then it filled up?
Oh well, that was Steve Wolfhard's
Oh, that's
like
Steve Wolfhard's.
headcanon.
Okay.
But it was similar. It was basically Jesse wanted to figure out like how did the afterlife and ooh work, because kind of when you read it, it doesn't make a lot of sense, because you can either go to an afterlife or you can be reincarnated, and that was always a big mystery the show had. Like its afterlife never made a ton of sense, and I like how this special was able to fairly clearly explain
Right.
what exactly the mechanics are, and like how you can be reincarnated or stay, or all that good stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
it was strange. There was like a strange helping of fictional theology that I found interesting.
Yeah. And also, I really did enjoy how the story was played out. So
Mhm.
we have, the second death, or new death, as he's called, where he wants to be able to just get rid of reincarnation and the other worlds and have everybody just die in like the first world where everything sucked. And the
Yeah,
reason
and
why was, well, we'll get to that later, but he was just like really angry at death and he just wanted things to be completely changed. And yeah, he's not a very good guy, that's for sure.
no, not likable, really.
No, no. Which makes like for a really good antagonist when you take a look into it. And also, I think that the biggest surprise for me was that we got to see Tiffany, and Tiffany became a major part of the story.
Yeah, he was like actually not just a joke character, but rather, yeah, like a very important part of the resolution, I guess.
Yeah, which was kind of surprising considering that Tiffany had always had a jealousy towards Finn because, he was Jake's really close friend. And so the fact that we got to see Tiffany kind of helping Finn out was really surprising.
I also like the little bit where at the very end, Joshua and Margaret said they were adopting him.
Yeah.
So he did become like Finn and Jake's brother. And that was funny. I was not expecting Tiffany to have a huge role. Then again, I wasn't expecting Mr. Fox at the
Yeah,
spoiler
like
alert.
that's even much
Yeah.
of a lesser character in the series.
I after the episode aired, I emailed Tom Herpick, who is the storyboard artist who voices Mr. Fox, and
Hmm.
he didn't work on Distant Lands, but they called him, up to voice the character, and he told me that when they told him kind of what the situation was, he was totally in the dark as to what exactly that meant. He thought that he was going to be bad, like the villain, because I think he heard that he was going to be New Death and that New Death was bad, but I think he misheard, and instead of New Death, he's going to be New Death or whatever. Anyway, but
Ah, I
yeah,
get what you're
so
saying. Yeah.
he said it was really fun and an unexpected twist, and I liked it too, because poor Mr. Fox always had like the worst luck in the series. So
Yeah, he did. So it was nice to see Mr. Fox actually get like a nice closure that
mhm.
was able to completely close off his story. It's just too bad that it happened when he was dead.
Yeah, exactly. I guess better than nothing, but yeah, less than ideal for most.
Right, right. But we the biggest plot twist for me was that when we find out about New Death, that not only was he Death's son, which I guess makes a lot of sense because the original voice actor for Death had passed away years before Distant
Mhm.
Lands aired, but also he was controlled by the Lich. And if you remember, by like watching the special, and I watched it 5 times, you see subtle references of the Lich in the flashbacks of New Death, which
Hmm.
is really, really clever.
Yeah, I totally missed that the first time. I mean, it was obvious that something was up with him, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
totally missed the Lich stuff until rewatching it and being like, oh wow, no, they were basically telling us what's going down. We just had to keep our eyes peeled for it, and I
Yeah,
didn't.
yeah. Like also the fact that he was like whispering to his hand, and we saw like the lich shadow in the background, and yeah, like that was great foreshadowing that you really need to watch a second or third time to get. And
Yeah,
the finally we get to have like the last confrontation with the lich, which was actually really, really satisfying.
it
And
was. Yeah,
that final confrontation with Finn and Jake having to take down New Death and remove the Lich once and for all. And I just thought that that was like really, really cool. And
the
go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say the choreography of that. I don't know if choreography is the right word for a cartoon, but like the blocking of that scene too, where they're like jumping around and uh, I believe there was a scene where they're jumping around like transforming through their past lives. I
Mm-hmm.
can't remember if that was when they were fighting the
Yeah, they
Lich
were they
or
were they were fighting each other to see who was going to be the one to kill off
that's
New
right.
Death,
That's
because
right.
whoever killed off New Death was going to be the New Death.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah,
And
you're absolutely right. I love the way that they were able to change into their different forms, like with like Finn turning into Shoko and Jake turning into the tiger. I just thought that was really, really cool.
it was definitely an episode that would make sense if you weren't like a hardcore fan. I think you could probably follow it for the most part, but it was an episode that had a ton of references for like the people who are super into the show's mythology. You know, like yeah, like Shoko. Like if you knew that Shoko was Finn's past life, that's a fun little find, or not just a fun little find, like a super cool Easter egg that I wasn't expecting. I don't know.
Oh, no, no, no. I thought it was like really, really cool. And also really surprising that Jonathan Frakes didn't come back to voice older Finn like he did in Dungeon Train and Puhoy. It was actually
Yeah,
David Bradley, who you might know as Mr. Filch from the Harry Potter movies.
I want to know the story of like, not nothing against him. It was fine, but I was just curious how he came to voice old Finn. You know what I mean?
I mean, maybe Jonathan was really busy with like Picard. Maybe he
Oh, that
couldn't
could
do
be.
it.
That could
So
be.
yeah, so I mean, maybe that could have been. I mean, that's the only explanation I can think of, because Picard and that special was happening around the same time, so maybe he was too busy to do it.
That would make sense. Yeah.
Or maybe
But
they
it,
just thought, oh, like they wanted like an authentic older voice for Finn, because like and David Bradley was able to pull it off really well. I mean, I couldn't hear his British accent, which I thought was like really,
no,
really good.
when I heard that that it was the actor who played Filch from Harry Potter, I was like, that doesn't seem right. Does
Yeah, that
not
doesn't
sound like
sound
him.
anything like him.
So he's got some skills there, I guess.
Yeah, like I'm surprised he hasn't done a lot of voice acting.
Yeah, seriously. Maybe this is his foray into it, you know.
Maybe,
Uh
possibly.
yeah, but it just was lovely. I don't know, it was a fantastic, the whole thing was a really fantastic send off to characters, and I love that it was able to both close the not to sound cheesy, I think I've said this before, but like close the door on Finn and Jake's story, but not like the story of their souls. Like that's an adventure that we'll probably never get to see, but that's definitely going to happen. But
Yeah,
that we know have
exactly.
an ending.
I mean, a lot of people have debated on whether Finn and Jake come back as Shermie and Beth, but I don't know, because that would have been like over 1,000 years later, and I don't think that that was long that how long that took.
Yeah, I don't. It's one of those things. I don't know if it maybe it would work, but I don't know if we would need to
Not
know
really. I
that. You know
mean,
what I
I
mean?
don't genuinely need to know what happened to Finn and Jake after they got reincarnated. How many times they got reincarnated, but I don't really need to know the answer to that.
Sure, and I get why. I'm not to say like if someone's interested in that, I totally understand that too. I like that the show was able to give us an ending that was like hopefully like happy. It was a happy ending. I thought at
Yeah,
least.
yeah, it was a happy ending, but at the same time, it was also really bittersweet, which
Hmm.
I thought that that was actually really well done. I mean, especially where you have that last bit where it said, Finn and Jake are together again, which is a
Yeah,
great tie into the original, which to the title itself. So, yeah, the fact that it was able to end in that way, I just thought, okay, if Adventure Time ends right here, then again, just like what I said with Obsidian, I would be 100% satisfied. I
I would
don't
as
need
well.
anything else. I got everything I needed, no more.
And I feel like it's pretty rare for a show to come back or a show to make a sequel or something that is like thoroughly satisfying. Like
Right.
I feel like the Distant Lands specials and maybe Together Again can serve as kind of an exemplification of them as a whole. But like obviously not perfect, nothing is, but probably as close to perfect as I could have asked for, you know?
Yeah, like
The,
here's the thing that I will probably say. Now, I understand what happened in the last season where they had to rush it because Cartoon Network
Mhm.
said, "Oh, you're being canceled." And they're like, "Wait, what?" And so they had to rush a lot of things. And I know that they really wanted to go in depth with Gulb and they wanted to have this big climactic fight with the Gum War, but they weren't able to do it in time. And I guess that this was kind of like their way of saying, hey, we got another chance to tell more stories and to have a definitive ending, which, by the way, is really, really rare.
yeah, absolutely.
So the fact that they were able to take advantage of it, like, wow, they knocked it out of the park.
One thing that I was kind of impressed with was the fact that, like you said, the original finale had some like issues because of the network, and I thought that they did a fantastic job given the sort of situation they were handed with the finale. But then they also were like, oh, by the way, here's like finale 2.0 or whatever, and then it was also really good.
Yeah.
And yeah, absolutely. So many times shows will like end and then come back and just completely drop the ball or just not be good. I think that this was a good example of like having a year or so off allowed the writers, maybe Adam, to kind of recharge a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and deliver some. Not that the previous stuff was low quality by any means, but I can imagine that making episode after episode after episode, back to back to back can be very draining. And I
Oh,
think this was
absolutely.
like,
And I'm sure that that was probably like even more pressure considering that, hey, Adventure Time is over. What more can you do?
mhm.
Like, oh, is it going to be like one of those cases in which, like, okay, we're going to see like the next installment and it's not going to be anywhere near as good because,
Mm-hmm.
usually a lot of the time when it comes to like, bringing back a series or something, usually they won't have the original people who worked on it in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what, when I heard that this was happening, my first thought was, okay, well, who's doing it? And then I heard Adam was in charge, and I was like, okay, well, I have no problem. I trust Adam thoroughly, and he's done I think I did a fantastic job show running the show in its final few or back half basically. So
Yeah, back half
if
because
he's involved,
yeah, Penn left after season 5 and then Adam took over around season 6.
and yeah, so that's all I needed to hear. And I think it definitely worked out. That's the same way with the Fiona and Cake stuff. Like as long as Adam's involved, I'm here for it.
Yeah. But again, I have to give kudos for Adam because I mean, I'm sure that a lot of people have seen what happens when the original creators of the show leave and then somebody who was like a major showrunner or was alongside with the creator takes over and they have a completely different interpretation of the
Hmm.
story and characters. And yes, it is different compared to what we've seen in like the early seasons where Penn was more like adventurous and Dungeons and Dragons like and self-contained stories with a lot of fun and goofy elements. But then you have Adam who comes along and is able to take that same scenario with Penn's vision and take it in a completely different direction by adding story and lore and character development and take the show into a completely different direction. But it was a direction that I think was kind of needed.
I agree. I think that obviously Penn Ward is a genius, and I don't mean this to sound as disrespect. Not I don't want to disrespect him by
Oh,
saying this, but
sure,
I
sure.
really
Of
I
course.
really like Adam's interpretation of Ooh. Like I love that Penn sort of created these characters and this marvelous world and the sort of tone and style, and then Adam came in and basically took sand and made a sandcastle with it.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think that's what a lot of people seem to overlook when it comes to like the creation of something. It's like, we always give credit to the person who created it, but the people who worked on it, are just as important. Like, I mean, a lot of the writers are important, which, by the way, I'm sure that you probably have already seen this, but the Animation Guild has been doing this major hashtag called Pay Animation Writers, because we learned that animation writers don't make nearly as much money compared to live action writers. And
That's
so it's a shame, considering that animation writers can put in so much, just so much work and passion into anything that they write, just as much as live action writers, and sometimes even less with the amount of time that they have to put into it, but they're able to still craft amazing work. And
absolutely.
also with like the artists who also work on it are just as important. I mean, we have the directors as well. I mean, for, I guess, well, going as like a video game example, for Shigeru Miyamoto, the Legend of Zelda series wouldn't be anywhere near as amazing if uh, if any of his producers weren't involved in it,
Yeah.
like Eiji Onuma, that's what I meant to say, and Yoshiaki Koizumi for the same thing on the Mario series, where he was able to bring some ideas that Miyamoto didn't even think of, and he's like, yeah, that would work. If without the likes of a lot of the people who worked on Adventure Time, such as Adam and such as all the other people, I don't know how Adventure Time would have evolved since then. And I think that it's important on that, because it would still be the catalyst of what we would see in a lot of animated shows for the next decade, where, hey, we need to have a story that has a lot of characters and it has a lot of world building, and over the course of the show we're going to take it in a darker direction where it's a lot more serious, and it ends on a really happy or bittersweet note, and a lot of shows today are like that.
Yeah, Adventure Time very much laid or at least inspired others, kind of laid a sort of stylistic foundation. And it's always really funny when I talk to people that aren't really super familiar with the show. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I love this show. It's really, really smart, clever. It's got all this great lore. And then they try to watch it, and they watch like Slumber Party Panic, the first episode. And
Right,
the
right,
first
right.
line is Princess Bubblegum saying, like, we need to add one more drop of explosive diarrhea. And they're always like, what? This does not seem like the show you promised. I'm like, yeah, it's weird. You got to kind of like give it a second, but you'll get there. And then they're always like, oh, wow, yeah, if you just like pretty soon before you notice it, the show has, it never changed. It just grew. It grew up basically in a fun way, in like an exciting, good way. And yeah, I always love to hear people kind of being like, I don't really think this is the show for me. And I'd be like, well, just give it a little bit more time.
Yeah, yeah. I think that Guillermo del Toro said it best when he did the quote for the art book. He said, "It is the rarest of tales that can be told with the ease of a child. Adventure Time is animated by incredible humanism, one that has its basis in the effortless bromance of Jake and Finn, yes, but one that also understands pathos, fragility, and loss. Contrary to Hollywood dictum, the characters are the story, and its structure is not dictated by a creaky three-act structure. It stays infuriatingly real by simply being in awe of the world and its characters, by being profoundly in love with it all."
That's beautiful. I always loved also remembering that Guillermo del Toro was a big fan. That
Yeah.
I was just like, I don't know. I feel like when Penn set out to create Adventure Time, he wasn't like, I'm going to create a cartoon that literally is going to change the game, And
No,
he,
I mean, especially since we even talked about this, that Nickelodeon turned it down 5 times because
yeah,
they felt it was too weird and it wasn't to their brand. And so instead, Cartoon Network picked it up, and look what happened. I mean, Cartoon Network became like the definitive network to watch animated shows
yeah,
in like the 2010s.
yeah. It completely, yeah, just completely sort of took over. And I'm glad that it went that way route, because animation, the sort of like story driven or plot driven animation that we've seen in the last few years, obviously is not 100% because of Adventure Time, but
No, no, of
definitely
course not.
that played a huge part in it, and just sort of got people to recognize like, oh, well, like we can use animation to tell stories that, we can make a kids show basically that doesn't have to be just for children, that like adults can watch without it being necessarily like a oh, this like a My Little Pony situation where like it's not intended for the older viewers, but then they still kind of end up watching it anyway. It's a situation where like, no, we designed this for a 7-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a 25-year-old, to all watch at the same time and all enjoy at a different level. And I've always loved that Adventure Time was able to do that.
Whether you enjoy it for the jokes, whether you enjoy it for the story, whether you enjoy it for the characters, whether you enjoy it for the music, any reason that you would enjoy it, it satisfies everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so rare to me. At least in my experience, I know that there are plenty of other great, awesome shows out there that do that to other people too, that affect them in that way. But Adventure Time was that show that I think one reason I have such a strong feeling for it is because it was sort of that show that made me realize that, oh, I didn't outgrow animation. It's just I hadn't seen some of the right kind to sort of connect with me as a 20-year-old or whatever. And when I saw Adventure Time, I was like, oh wow, this is speaking to me. Even though it's a show about fart jokes and adventures and Dungeons and Dragons shenanigans, it's also extremely deep. Like there's beautiful characters and wonderful stories, and it feels so real. And that's a strange thing to say about the Land of Ooo. It feels real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does feel real. And, and no disrespect to Thad Komorowski, the writer of the Sick Little Monkeys, Ren and Stimpy story. I definitely respect his personal opinion where, he talked about like, when is the next golden age of animation going to happen, when he was writing like the last chapter of his book discussing about like, the golden era of television climax with SpongeBob SquarePants, the last crafted cartoon of any kind to reach a wide audience. And when he was talking about Adventure Time, he said this in his chapter: not everyone can draw or write well, but it no longer matters. We have Cartoon Network's Adventure Time and regular show as the reward of slipping standards and a devaluation of skill. So he was talking about like, we've entered the next dark age of animation, and when is going to be the next golden era. Well, again, Thad, I respect your opinion, and I'm not saying anything wrong about it in terms of like, oh, you're wrong and you should be ashamed of it. Absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
But I completely disagree. I think that we're living in the golden age of animation now.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's a lot of sort of fetishization and romanticization of older golden ages, especially. I mean, I love 90s animation. I love the old school Bugs Bunny animation. I'm not saying that those weren't good, but I think we do often look back at that stuff nostalgically with rose-colored glasses, and it's a bummer because right now, like, there are so many cartoons that more than one, I should say. If there's more than one, I think that's impressive. But there's more than one cartoon out there that is attracting huge fandoms. Because you had like Adventure Time, Steven Universe, regular show, Gravity Falls. We got the Owl House now. These are shows that have latched onto groups of people that otherwise wouldn't be watching animation.
Exactly. Phineas and Ferb, and we also have like Legend of Korra, and
Avatar,
Avatar, the Loud House, and now recently with Amphibia, the Owl House, and the Ghost of Molly McGee are like really like luring in a lot of people. And even with like the adult cartoons, I recently talked about an article where they were saying about like adult animation has never been bigger. Like Invincible and Harley Quinn and F is for Family are like really, really big in terms of like showcasing cartoons for adults. And there's even more talks about like animation in terms of like going in different directions. I mean, recently Disney, when they did their Disney Plus Day, and they were even discussing about like, do we want to bring in not so family friendly content on Disney Plus, because a lot of people were upset when they heard the news about the Owl House being canceled because it wasn't their brand or something like that. And so now there was even an announcement saying, hey, we're going to have 20th Century Animation bring in an animated show on Disney Plus that is for adults. So yeah, I think that we're living in the golden age now. We're able to see things that would have never happened 30 years ago. Absolutely. Representation of the LGBTQ community, representation of minorities, talking about stuff that would have been considered to be too scary for kids, like death or depression or stress and anxiety. Like, we're living in it now. I think that for people who are saying, oh, but the 90s was better, it's like, okay, I get it, that stuff was groundbreaking and revolutionary in its own time, and especially with the decade prior with the 80s, where it was a lot of like cartoons for that were based off
toy
of
commercials.
toys. Yeah, sorry guys, please admit it.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I love Transformers and Ninja Turtles as much as the next person, but still, I mean, we knew what they were.
There's a good example there. She-Ra,
Yes,
80s
She-Ra.
product that they completely took and reinvented. And
absolutely, like nobody would have given a crap about She-Ra like 10 years ago.
No, absolutely not. And it was fantastic. And it's like one of my favorite shows. And when I try to tell people that, and they're like, "Wait, the He-Man spinoff?" And I'm like, "Yeah,
You're right,
yeah,
right.
the He-Man spinoff." But like, trust me, it's different. Like, again, yeah, no disrespect to the people who made it originally. They were doing kind of, what.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
creative in the confines of
even like Secret of the Sword, still kind of like a guilty pleasure of mine, especially with that song that played in the beginning. I mean, even though that I do agree with like Lindsay Ellis, it doesn't rhyme whatsoever when you hear like somewhere out there someone needs me. I don't know how or where, but believe me, it's like, it's stupid.
Grinding me with me. It's building off the past, taking what came before it, and then sort of just taking it a step further. I think that's the thing people often misunderstand about like comparing cartoons, especially with, I feel like the Cartoon Network fans will always be like, it used to be better.
Yeah, I know. It's not like, you ever seen that meme of like all the pictures of like all the Hanna-Barbera characters and the cartoons, and it's like, this is what we had, and like what was like a picture of Teen Titans Go, it's like, this is what we have now. It's like
I just feel like those arguments miss the fact that like you can love the old stuff, but also recognize that the stuff we have now built off of it and went further because of the past. It's not like it's not a zero-sum game where you have to pick one. But I do think you're right. I do think that the golden age is now. Writers are able to do more things, target different groups, different age groups, and just artistically, technology has made certain things easier and cheaper, and that's really awesome. Also, the internet has made like fan productions or like fan cartoons and stuff like that.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we were able to get like Homestar Runner and Ed's World and Tome Terrain of Magical Expertise and various other animated shows. Recently with like Has Been Hotel has been like really massive because of the internet. And because of that, I think that that's going to be on Adult Swim, I think.
Oh, really? Interesting.
I think. I don't know, but
I know
think it's going to
be
airing on TV or something. But yeah, I mean, those stuff has been like massive. And because that they love animation and they were inspired by a lot of the shows that have been out today and even back then, that they were able to go in their own separate directions and able to craft what a lot of people want to see. And I think that with the variety that we have with animation, when people say, oh, we're in the second or third dark age, I just look at it as like, I think you need to take a little step closer with more open eyes that is not biased and see that we're living in a time in which when we can be able to have representation and storytelling and character development that we've never been able to see before. So yes, I think that, again, with partially thanks to Adventure Time in terms of like the modern age, we were able to get that. And Distant Lands was able to like cement that for sure. It's like, yeah, this stuff has been some of the best in terms of storytelling and characters and world building and songs and animation. And I'm really happy on how it all turned out. Each and every single one of these specials are very unique in their own right. They have their strengths and their weaknesses, and they have personal preferences to a lot of people. So I would suggest that you watch 4 of these specials and come up with your own conclusion.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. So right before we conclude, now let's talk about the announcement about Fiona and Cake.
Yeah. So when I heard this at first, I thought I guess it wasn't like an April Fool's Day, time for April Fool's Day, but I kind of thought it was a joke. Like I was sort of like, how are they going to do that? But when I heard that Adam was involved and that Hannah Kay was going to be there, I was like, okay, well, those folks are involved. It's probably going to be all right. I have no idea what to expect though.
Yeah, like literally we knew about the announcement just months ago. No further details has been revealed as of the recording of this podcast.
Fiona and Cake have never been like one of my absolute favorite parts of Adventure Time, but they did end the series. The last Fiona and Cake episode, it ended on such a cliffhanger and like a wacky literally out of this world cliffhanger.
Yeah.
I want to know what's going on,
Yeah, and the whole thing about like there's this laser that's going into Ice King's mind. It's like, wait a minute. Are you trying to say that Fiona and Cake wasn't just the figment of Ice King's imagination? So somebody is delivering the message, because we see Simon in the promotional art, which means that he has a part of this. So now that just brings up a lot of questions. Like, is Fiona and Cake real? Who's the one? Maybe he goes over to a separate world where Fiona and Cake are real in a different dimension or universe. There's so many questions.
I guess since Adventure Time exists in a multiverse, there's the whole like anything can happen.
That's
sort of
true,
thing.
yeah.
So
and this is the oldest that we've seen Simon in, because I see like his hair is like turning gray a little bit. So and his face is a little wrinkly. So this probably takes place like even decades after Obsidian.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious if we'll see Marceline and Bubblegum, but Finn and Jake have probably long been dead.
Yeah, they're long dead, I think.
Yeah, it's there's so much potential, there's so much mystery. The fact that it's 8 22-minute episodes too is really strange. I believe that's right. I might.
Yeah, I think you might be right. It is it's another mini series.
That's a lot. So I hope that it's good. Adventure Time has generated such goodwill with its sort of finale stories, and it's just like handle on storytelling and characterization that part of me, if there is a part of me that's worried that it might not be good, another part of me is kind of put at ease by the fact that the show is really competent at that, and it's had practice now.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the next announcement was, we're making an Adventure Time movie.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, because they wanted to do an Adventure Time movie. I think around, what was it, like the 4th or 5th season or something?
Yeah, it was. I remember there was a big talk about it in 2015 when it had leaked, and then it never went anywhere.
Yeah, and I think that the idea of like, hey, even years after the show ended, we can have movies. I mean, Gumball is having a movie. Phineas and Ferb had their movie on Disney Plus. So I wouldn't be surprised if, hey, people are still watching Adventure Time. We're going to have the Adventure Time movie that we've always wanted.
And I feel a little exhausted living in an age where like everything will come back eventually, but I like the idea of sort of like a Christmas special idea with certain franchises. Like, maybe don't bring a show back for like a full season. Maybe just have like a special every once in a while so that you can stay in touch with it, like, and visit the characters again, but that you don't have to emotionally exhaust the author or the writers, and also spoil any goodwill. So I feel like that's kind of what Distance Lands did.
Yeah.
And I think that's a cool, interesting sort of template for maybe future success for other shows.
Yeah, that is true, because very similar to like how Nickelodeon was able to do it with like Rocko's Modern Life, Static Cling, and Harold the Jungle Movie, and Enter the Florpus, in which they've been shows that haven't been on the air for decades, and then we have the opportunity to see like one final special, and everybody loved it, and it felt like a return to form. Are You Afraid of the Dark was able to have its mini series, and Legends of the Hidden Temple was able to have a different direction in terms of like the contestants being adults. You have the SpongeBob musical. I mean, I know that SpongeBob's still been around, but not like a series of things where like people were like genuinely excited about. But I think that if they're able to continue in that direction, it's like, okay, we've had a show that's been gone for a while, but hey, we have this special, and we're going to tell some stories that we weren't able to tell the first time. I think that would really gravitate towards a lot of people saying, oh yeah, I really enjoyed watching that show, and I kind of missed it, and I can't wait for it to come back. So yeah, I'm genuinely curious about Fiona and Cake, on how that one turns out, and we'll just wait and see if there's any future Adventure Time stuff. But yeah, Paul, you definitely have a lot of work to do, considering that you have to update your book.
Yep, I do. I have a lot of content to sift through and sort.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for this episode of Casual Chat. So, Paul, once again, thank you so much for coming on by.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. I love talking about this stuff.
Yeah, so go ahead and plug and promote your stuff.
Sure. So if you want to follow me on Tumblr, I'm at gunterfan1992.tumblr.com. You can also follow me on Twitter. I'm Paul Thomas 1992. And if you do follow me on Twitter, my bio contains a link to the book Exploring the Land of Ooh, which I wrote about the production history of Adventure Time, and you can get a free digital PDF copy of that using that link. So feel free to stop on by and click the follow button.
Oh, and by the way, we also need to promote your zine.
Oh yeah. So I helped organize a Bat-Celine zine, which is a Marceline and bat themed art collection, and proceeds for this are going to be donated to Merlin Tuttle's bat conservation. He's a very well-known bat photographer. His first name is Merlin, which is also awesome.
Cool.
But he's a really super well-known bat photographer, and I'm a big bat fan. I think they're a very misunderstood creature, and I love Marceline, and she can turn into a bat. So it seemed logical to sort of put it all together. And we're selling copies of those, $5 for a digital copy. The zine has 30 really awesome illustrations in it. You can also pick up a copy for 10 if you want a physical copy plus shipping, and that can be picked up at Gumroad. I think it's, let me check if it's
go for it.
Thomas. I want to make sure I have the right one. I think it's Gunter Fan. I'd have to cut some of this out. Let's see.
Yeah, so while you're looking for that, I'm going to plug off my stuff. So
sure.
oldschoollane.net is my website, youtube.com/oldschoollane, where you can be able to check out my videos and podcasts. If you want to follow me on my social media pages, I'm on Facebook at facebook.com/oldschoollane. I'm on Twitter at Patty_B_Miranda. You can listen to my podcast on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Radio Public, many places. New episodes of my podcast will go there first, and then they'll go up in a few days on YouTube. So I just want to thank you guys so much for listening. I really do appreciate it. This is going to be the last episode of Casual Chats for the next month, because episode 175 is approaching us, and we have a milestone celebration considering it is Old School Lane's 10th anniversary.
Woo!
And I'm going to celebrate it with, you know what? I'm not even going to tell you how I'm going to celebrate it. You're going to have to tune in and find out, but I can assure you it's going to be something really, really special. So were you able to get the information?
Yeah, it's gunterfan.gumroad.com.
Okay, well, there you go. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. Let us know in the comments below about your thoughts on Adventure Time Distant Lands. What was your favorite special? What was your least favorite special? What new characters that were introduced in Distant Lands did you enjoy? What new characters that you didn't really care too much about? Did you wanted to see new episodes of Distant Lands, and what characters you wanted to focus on? What are your thoughts on Fiona and Cake? And also let us know in terms of what Adventure Time projects that you would like to see happen in the future. Would you like to see a movie? Would you like to see maybe a season 11, even though we got that in the comics, but still nonetheless, maybe we'll have a full season 11. Please let us know. Thank you so much. Hope to see you around soon, and take care.